Hello everyone, welcome to Anime No Me, and thank you for joining us for another One Piece video. In today's video, we're going to be talking about the early leaked information about our upcoming chapter of One Piece, chapter 1070 of the manga. We're going to talk about all the information we have so far about this chapter, and then we're going to comment on each piece of information while we don't have the complete chapter, so we can speculate on what might actually transpire. As we like to say in all of these leaked videos, please remember that these are just leaks, and we don't have the complete information of the chapter. So as leaks come out, be sure to stay tuned to the channel so we can bring you more videos to give you the maximum details and keep you informed about this upcoming chapter of 1070. On top of that, please remember that things may be different in the official translation and things might even be in a different order. So these leaks are only going to be a small piece of information for the overall chapter that will be released soon. But before we go diving into those leaks, if you're new to the channel or even if you've watched a bunch of our videos, we'd be absolutely honored if you'd leave us a like and even subscribe and maybe leave us a comment letting us know what you thought of the video. It really helps us out and motivates us to make more content. And if you'd like to help out the channel in a bigger way, consider sharing this video or another one of your favorites with a friend. But without further ado, let's get into these leaks for chapter 1070. So my friends, in these early leaks of chapter 1070 of One Piece, we have the continuation of Luffy and Lucci's fight, and a new enemy is close to Egghead, as well as the fact that we're going to get some more information about Devil Fruits. Now, as we like to do in these early leak videos, before going into detail about each topic, we're going to give you an overall list of everything that'll be presented and then take each one in turn. And for this chapter, we've got 7 of them for you. The first thing we have is chapter 1070 is titled Stronger Humans and is most likely referencing the Seraphim. Second, on the cover of this chapter, there are the 5 scientists gathered by humanity and the world. The 5 scientists are Vegapunk, Caesar, Judge, Queen, and an unknown woman, and this was probably the original lineup that was in the group called Mads. Third, Vegapunk tells the Straw Hats about the procedure for replicating a devil fruit and creating an artificial fruit. Fourth, the battle between Luffy and Lucci continues, and Rob Lucci just can't seem to land a single hit on Luffy. Fifth, Sentomaru did not die. In fact, he was just knocked out because of the serious injury, and he has been taken inside of Egghead to have his wounds tended to. Sixth, Lucci manages to take control of the Seraphim. And seventh, the last page shows Kizaru is leading a fleet to Egghead. So now that we've gone over the list of topics in this chapter, let's talk about each one of them in turn and talk about what they might represent in a bit more detail and how this chapter might unfold. Furthermore, it seems like we're going to get some more interesting information about devil fruits, starting with the fact that the Seraphim eat artificial devil fruits in order to become stronger. Vegapunk, it seems, through a very complicated procedure, managed to replicate some devil fruits, allowing the Seraphim to be able to use their powers just like the ancient Shishibukai. Although it seems for some Seraphim, it's difficult to give them the powers of an ex-warlord, as in the case of Crocodile, who has a Logia fruit of sand, something in this chapter where Vegapunk says it's just really difficult to replicate a Logia fruit. It also seems it's quite difficult to replicate Doflamingo's fruit because his fruit is awakened, and even if Vegapunk managed to create an artificial fruit of the line like Doflamingo's, its user, who would be a Seraphim, wouldn't have all the same abilities. This lesser fruit will result in an inferior version of the former warlord, as possibly Vegapunk has not yet discovered the way in which devil fruits are awakened, causing its user to achieve an even greater power. So Doflamingo's Seraphim will end up being weaker than the original, something that shouldn't present a problem since Vegapunk is able to add other various weapons to the Seraphim's body to make it even stronger. This is what he did with S-Shark, the Seraphim that is modeled after Jinbei. You see, this Seraphim is able to swim on land or sea, and this is something very similar to Senor Pink's fruit, in addition to the fact that he added a water reservoir on his arm, allowing him to use water blows just like Fishman Karate. In this chapter, Vegapunk goes deeper in how he replicates a devil fruit and the difficulty he has in creating an artificial fruit of each category. Starting with the Zoen class, which based on the words of Vegapunk are the easiest to replicate because they're based on animals, as most of these animals are common, and this makes it much easier to get the lineage factor out of them. Although mythological models are much more difficult to replicate due to their special conditions, it takes the fruit or the user of that fruit to be present in order for it to be replicated. And it seems this is how Vegapunk managed to make a copy of the Animenomi model Seryu. Vegapunk used Kaido's lineage factor so he could replicate his devil fruit. This allowed the good doctor to create a dragon fruit nearly identical identical to Kaido's, although he did consider it a failure because it just didn't come out the same color. This is because, of course, Kaido's dragon form is blue, and the artificial dragon fruit that was eaten by Momonosuke is pink, and it's just the different in colors, but both fruits still have the same destructive and physical power. Now, although this doesn't make the actual artificial devil fruit a failure, it really means it's an amazing scientific advance. But being a perfectionist, Vegapunk thinks he failed. But quite to the contrary, he only further expanded the possibility of there being more than one user of a mythical Zoen fruit. Vegapunk further details that a lot more research is still needed for the mythical Zoen fruits to be produced perfectly, because some mythical Zoen fruits will probably never be able to be replicated even if Vegapunk were to study them thoroughly. A great example of this would be the Nika fruit that is currently in Luffy's possession, because this fruit is not based on any living being, and not one even existed in real legends, with its animalistic form like a dragon or a phoenix or some kind of an ice wolf. This could mean that mythical Zoen fruits based on divine entities such as Nika or a Buddha are probably impossible to be replicated because of the bodily change the fruit causes in the user. So while the user maintains a humanized form, they still gain the characteristics of this divinity, as in the case of Sengoku when activating his transformation gets bigger and has his body covered in gold. Luffy, on the other hand, has his clothes and hair turn completely white and gains a little bit of Nika's mental characteristics, laughing all the time and having fun in many different ways during a battle. So because this takes a bit of the owner's personality to really activate, this might be something that would be really difficult or nearly impossible for Vegapunk to replicate, making his research on how to replicate all devil fruits really never able to be completely finished. Moving on further in the revelations, Vegapunk also tells us that to replicate a paramecia, he only needs the user's lineage factor, something really simple to do because Vegapunk would only need the users of the fruit. As in the case with Kuma, Vegapunk has been studying the revolutionary for quite a long time, managing to get all the information about his body and especially his bloodline factor. Through all of the knowledge that he's obtained, he was able to build the pacifistas and then was able to create an artificial paw fruit and fed it to Esper, allowing the Seraphim to obtain the same powers as Kuma himself. And finally we reach the Logia class, where Vegapunk says in this chapter that they are practically impossible to replicate, and Vegapunk doesn't want to talk too much about it, although it does seem that he talks about how he managed to replicate Kizaru's powers. Because the Logias emulate elements of nature, it can be a little more complicated to get the ability to replicate. So usually, Vegapunk uses the lineage factor to be able to create a devil fruit or to get the knowledge of how to replicate that fruit. But because an element doesn't have life or a bloodline factor, it should make it much more complicated to come up with a way to replicate these elemental fruits. And it seems he's only been able to manage to replicate one ability, and that is of the Pika Pika no Mi. And it's actually in a very different way than usual, which he possibly may explain further in the chapter. We just don't have it in this first batch of leaks. But because he can only replicate that single ability of a Logia fruit, it means that the other abilities of the Glint Glint fruit or Fruit of Light, or any other abilities for Logias for that matter, he's just unable to replicate them with this same method. And it seems Vegapunk may have used some scientific methodology or technology to replicate the same way that this Light fruit is able to recreate a laser, albeit in a much more scientific way rather than a light control coming from a devil fruit. Moving away from our discussion of devil fruits, based on leaked information, it seems that Luffy's battle against Lucci is still going on, where Luffy has managed to land several punches on Lucci, managing to be at the advantage in the battle, but it also seems that Lucci just can't hurt Luffy at any time. As we saw in Luffy's fight against Kaido, in this current battle, Luffy is practically invincible in his Gear 5th transformation, making it impossible for Luffy to take any damage from any kind of attack. However, because Luffy still retains the weakness to cutting attack, it seems like Lucci's claws are going to be the only implement that is going to be able to hurt Luffy. However, Lucci is unable to land any lethal strikes on Luffy, which will likely cause him to be defeated very soon. Next in these leaks, we also have confirmation that Sentomaru is still alive, despite receiving that incredible strike from Luffy in the previous chapter. However, he's not going to be able to stay in the fight, so he's not going to be able to give orders to the Seraphim. After taking the hit, Sentomaru was then moved to Egghead's medical center to have his wounds healed as quickly as possible, so he won't lose his life. However, because Sentomaru is no longer in combat, CP0 was able to gain absolute control over the Seraphim, seeing that they were at a disadvantage against fighting Luffy. So Lucci seems like he's gonna be able to take control of the Seraphim and orders them to obey his orders, ordering them to help him during his mission on Egghead Island. And finally, at the end of the chapter, we learn that Kizaru is very near to Egghead Island and is leading a Navy fleet. So once the Navy makes landfall on Egghead, it seems that they're gonna enter the fray against the Straw Hats and therefore Vegapunk. And that, my friends, brings us to the end of our leaks. As we said, these are early leaks at best, so please make sure you stay tuned to the channel, because as we get more leaks about our upcoming chapter of 1070, we will be sure to bring you another video to keep you informed on all that is going on at Egghead Island. But with all that said, we'd now love to know what you think about it. What do you think is going to happen in this fight between Rob Lucci and Luffy? Now, many in the community have thought that it was going to be rather one-sided, that even if Lucci had awakened his fruit, it would still be rather one-sided to Luffy because we're talking about a Yonko here. But do you think that Lucci might be able to pull something out? Next, what do you think Kizaru's objective is on the island? Is he there to support CP0? Or is he there because he really feels that Vegapunk should be protected? Let us know what you think about all that in the comments below. So as we wrap up our leak video, we'd like to thank you all so much for watching the video, especially those of you who've stayed with us here all the way to the very end. Be sure to comment on any themes or ideas that you'd like to see in future videos. And also, since you made it this far, give us a like and hit that red subscribe button before you head out to take on the rest of your day. I hope to see you all in our next video. Let's keep sailing this giant sea together. Take care.